Okay, I think we're good to get started. If people join us, during the session, this will be recorded. So everybody who has registered and everybody who is attending will receive a copy of the recording after the session is over, as well as all of the sessions from our summit. So, but we're glad to have you here with us live right now. This session, again, is very exciting. It's your future customer, marketing your business in 2021 and beyond. As with most things during this past year and a half, marketing trends have really shifted. With more people working remotely, ordering online, different supply chain issues that we've had, and kind of the way that businesses need to present themselves to potential customers has never been more important. And kind of understanding who your future customer is, where they're looking for you, and then how to best reach them with the right message can seem overwhelming. Today's panel discussion will talk with these industry professionals and thought leaders from different types of media, from out of home, digital, radio, to learn how to best position yourself today and into the future. Moderating today's session will be our very own BBB CEO, Paulette Scarpetti, who has been at the helm of our BBB for 43 years, and we're very excited to have you moderating this session. So Paulette, I'm going to kick it over to you right now and let you introduce our panelists. And one thing to note, if you do have questions for these panelists throughout the session, please put them in the chat box or the question box, and note who you're directing that question to, so that when we do ask the questions, we know that it's going to the appropriate person. And then Matt from our BBB will be moderating the Q&A at the very end of the session. Again, thank you for joining us, and I will pop back on at the end of the discussion.
Well, hello, everyone. Today, as Jackie mentioned, I have three panelists joining us from the three different distinct advertising mediums to help you navigate your options when you are trying to get your message to the consumers you serve. Each one of these individuals is unique. So I will interview them separately and ask you to, as Jackie mentioned, put your questions in the chat box, but just put their name next to it. And then later on, if you have a second question, don't go ahead and feel free to do that again. Again, just putting the name of the individual you are sending the question to. We will answer all the questions when we finish the interviews. Our first panelist today that I would like to introduce is Victoria Mottesheard. I'm trying, Victoria, a senior marketing director for OUTFRONT Media. Victoria has over 14 years experience in the advertising industry and is closely involved in client strategy, reaching businesses and consumers in the Northeast and across the country. Beyond campaigns, Victoria works on development of digital marketing in out-of-home industry. She is in the position to aid sales through development, consumer journey analysis, and audience-focused strategy. Victoria is actively involved with industry associations focusing on standardization and advancement of measurement. So that's a mouthful, Victoria. So now I'd like to ask you, how did you know you even wanted a career in marketing?
Well, the funny thing is I didn't. I was a film major in college, and I really just wanted to tell stories. And, that I just ended up at the time we were CBS Outdoor. But, over time, after starting in these entry-level positions, I really saw how advertising and marketing really does tell a story. And what's really unique about it is whenever our clients can tell stories across all of our mediums. So from out of home to television to radio to digital and social, and really connect all of them together is really exciting. And where the future of advertising is going is just amazing. So
what would you say from all of that is the most rewarding part of your job?
The most rewarding part of my job is really seeing the success of campaigns. Personally, I love it whenever I see excited clients who are, who have that I made it moment when they see themselves on a giant billboard, or having great opportunities to share really heartfelt community outreach campaigns. where they can involve, people within local communities to make a difference. So those are some of the things that make my job really successful and really happy.
Okay, so let's get into some harder questions now, Victoria. As you study consumer behaviors, how have you found these behaviors have changed since the pandemic?
Yeah. So obviously our daily routines have shifted drastically. During the pandemic, we stayed closer to home, but with vaccinations on the rise, we continue to return to this modified lifestyle, combining the flexibility of working from home, but the collaboration with that in-office experience. And additionally, consumers are eager to have social experiences. Therefore, out of home is associated with joy. A recent Expedia travel report found that 72% of consumers plan to travel over the next 12 months. I know I'm included in that. So people are really looking forward to those in real world experiences.
So, I know OUTFRONT also does a lot of billboard advertising as well. So how did that advertising fit in if people weren't driving anywhere really during the pandemic?
Yeah, so obviously at first, we all went into immediate lockdown, but there were still so many businesses and so many individuals that had essential jobs that were out and about. And we were fortunate enough to have some proprietary software that is able to track mobility. And so we were easily able to jump in and start seeing the trends tick back up as people started to, get outside the home, but in a very safe way. So a lot of our major roadways where our billboards are really return to a high level of pre-pandemic consumers pretty quickly. Obviously, the metropolitan areas and the central business districts have been slower to return. But overall, really being able to see the mobility has been really supportive of our especially our billboard inventory.
So from your perspective, how has more reliance on technology in your everyday lives affected the consumer journey?
Yeah, so speaking of the mobility data in Connecticut specifically, mobility on roadways is actually up above pre-pandemic levels. But speaking of technology in general, during the pandemic, technology has really expedited from delivery services to transit and beyond, all at the touch of a button. We're able to see where things are on the go in real time. And the most obvious technology that we have adapted to is QR codes over the past year and a half. These have been around for years, but haven't fully became integrated into our lives until now. And in turn, that really just fuels our smartphones to be the remote control of our lives. So it's really exciting to see brands integrate that within their marketing channels. Scan to purchase a product or ticket, scan to learn more information, visit a website, scan to follow or use an AR filter in social. And these are all great opportunities that can be done across multiple advertising channels.
Oh, that's great. So how does OUTFRONT look at data and insights?
Yeah, we're constantly seeking new ways in which we can connect with audiences where it matters most. So out of home is ingrained in location, but now with upgraded data, we're able to really connect with consumers based on their behavior, as well as in near real time. So pairing out of home with mobile provides us the opportunity to connect with audiences from the big screen to the small screen and allows them to act and engage.
Have you seen any investments in performance data and digital that it made you see going through all of this?
Can you repeat that?
Let me say it easier. What investments in performance data and digital have you seen?
Yeah, so we have, as a company, we've invested a lot in various different attribution models. But overall, I think that companies are really looking for data, really looking for opportunities to be able to show that ROI, connecting, their impressions to the dollars that they spend. So, increases in regards to mobile devices, I think has been a great way to connect those that have viewed ads to an action taken.
Can you describe for us how that is done? I know when you're going by a board, a digital board, or I guess any board, you can actually have your cell phone and messages could be sent to you. How exactly does that all work?
Yeah, so through mobile, we geofence our out-of-home inventory, so it's proximity. So again, we're ingrained in location, so we geofence the area surrounding that. Out-of-home is a huge driver for mobile engagement. So people are 48% more likely to click on a mobile ad after being exposed to an out-of-home ad first. So again, really having that proximity opportunity in regards to that out-of-home primer is really important. So yeah, we geofence. So when you come into that area within the zone of potentially seeing the out-of-home ad, you could potentially be served an ad in app that aligns with the same out-of-home ad that you would have seen frequency.
So now you're driving. When are you served this ad? A little bit later or while you're driving?
Great question. So it can depend. It is all while you're within that area. So hopefully you are not driving and on your device at the same time. Maybe you're a passenger in the car, or you're on public transportation, or maybe you're in a walkable area. Again, the geofences tend to be larger. So, it could be a mile, it could be 5 miles within that general area. So you could be at your destination of choice by the time you receive that ad.
Oh, thank you. I was a little worried about that one. What are some
Safety
trends you
first.
have? What are some trends you have seen specifically between November of last year and now?
Favorite topic, and I wrote down a laundry list. Obviously, I mentioned QR codes, but really purpose and sustainability. Brands taking a stand and definitely sharing that out there and really ingraining it in everything that they do. A sense of community. I think during the pandemic, we all kind of came together with a sense of community and safety. And something that I've seen more recently is really humor in ads. I feel like over the past 18 months, we've really just been extra cautious on that. And again, have, been a little bit more soft-spoken and had safety at the forefront, but ads are starting to become really funny again, which is just refreshing. And it kind of goes along with our behaviors as well. We're starting to feel more comfortable. A lot of exploration, adventure, people getting out and, exploring and doing things, convenience, shareability. And then also, I think what's been really interesting is what has been released so far with the US Census in regards to multicultural. And I think that's something that we're going to see a lot more of in the coming months and years in regards to this changed demographic landscape, which again, I think is really refreshing, speaking to this new, or not new, but this multicultural audience.
Very good. So you're gearing up now, I'm sure, for the end of the year, the end of 2021, as we enter this last quarter. And then there's 2022. So what kind of forecasting highlights do you have for us?
Yeah, so the most exciting is that out of home specifically is expected to grow. So according to a recent Magna forecast, out of home is expected to grow 11%. So that's great news. We're really looking forward to supporting all of those local and national businesses out there to help those businesses grow as well. And another recent report, local US advertising will enjoy a 6.4% growth in 2022. So local growth is huge, especially within our local markets, such as Connecticut itself. So we're really, really excited to help that along the way. Again, the mention in regards to the US Census and more multicultural conversation. I think too, the sense of really returning to all of those activities that we've missed so much, kind of like the fear of missing out. So I hope that we will see a little bit more sense of urgency in some of the messaging. There's a great Caesar Sportsbook campaign that's running right now across the US that has a countdown to a live game. So obviously, if you can't make it to the game, you can at least put a wager on it, and it's just counting down until that time. But I think that it's something that's overlooked in regards to countdowns within some of our ads, or coming soon, or tomorrow. So I think a sense of urgency, a sense of being a part of something is something that could come up in 2022. And then lastly, specifically to out of home, is really emerging out of home. So I mentioned earlier augmented reality, even anamorphic content, so 3D design. Again, these are opportunities that allows you to reach the masses, potentially engage individually, and share it out to the world, taking it from in real life, IRL to URL, and then back again.
So in your opinion, what is the importance of brand purpose, and how does OUTFRONT perpetuate and help brands on their brand journey?
Yeah, so this is something that we have definitely spent a lot of time on, and I think brand purpose is ingrained in everything that we do. At OUTFRONT, our purpose is to help people, places, and business grow stronger. So, at the onset of the pandemic, we connected with the CDC and helped get their messages out. And then we transitioned over to local stimulus and helping those local businesses. And then we asked our people, again, our people are our greatest assets, right? So what were things that mattered to them? And they stated social injustice and food insecurity. So we partnered with brands such as The Color of Change and FarmLink, and really used that as our mission to support those causes. And a fun stat is 71% of consumers prefer buying from brands that align with their values. And obviously that number skews high for the younger generations. And we're seeing a lot of those brands use out of home as a megaphone to share their purpose. So for instance, Uber during the pandemic used it for a social outreach message. Hyundai used it for their sustainability and climate. And we're even seeing it on the local side in regards to their purpose of connecting with community and helping communities grow. So I think purpose is extremely important. And it's really important for it to come from not only the business, but from the people that make up the business.
So how is OUTFRONT evolving as a business?
Yeah, so we focus on best in class. So obviously rooted in location. So having the best locations in the best areas. And then with standout creative, we have a in-house studios team that does creative across the country. They know the local markets and they know how to design for out of home. And then of course, we're powered by audience. So, we're really fueling into all of that data that we can provide to support locations as well as strategy. And then we continue to invest in technology. So both software and hardware, again, supporting the data side of the business. But also we continue to invest in building new inventory, new digital inventory. Currently, we have 30 digital billboards across Connecticut, and we're continuing to grow with more coming in 2022.
Wow. So can you tell me why it is important for brands to show market flexibility? And for our audience, what are some ways that they can do that?
Yeah, so I think if we've learned one thing from the pandemic, it's that there's constant change. So consumer behavior has changed, business has changed, and technology has grown and fueled our behaviors in business. So brands need to be flexible and relevant, and they need to connect with the community in an authentic way.
Well, finally, I'm towards our end of our part here, Victoria, but do you have any other tips you'd like to share with our viewers today?
tips. I think from a tip standpoint, one of the things that I always recommend is really just making sure that you have a unified message across all of your channels, so that when someone is seeking out your brand, they recognize it. They've seen it on some other channel, whether it's across, TV, radio, out of home, social, etc. But really having that unified brand message and a unified voice as well.
Well, thank you very much, Victoria, for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom when it comes to the types of advertising that OUTFRONT does. Now we're going to move on to our next panelist to get some insight on radio advertising. John Fuller is the president and CEO of Full Power Radio. And John's story is the same as many local business owners in our community who have turned passion into profit. As a young man, John transformed a chicken coop into his first station at the age of 21. He did the morning show before hitting the road selling advertising. At night, he worked in the wee hours recording commercials. Every few years, he would buy or build another radio station and would construct radio towers for his stations, as well as cellular phone providers. 35 years later, he is still doing what he loves with now 27 radio signals in 5 states and a staff charged with entrepreneurial pride. John, your start is a very interesting story. Tell me, what has kept you motivated all these years?
The listeners, the advertisers, watching them grow, and the listeners are, they turn into raving fans of the radio station, which we get to meet them on a first name basis. And that's pretty cool. And the advertisers, I'm still out meeting with advertisers, learning about businesses, but it's almost like the seminar. You find out things as it's happening, as new ideas are emerging, and as different new things enter the marketplace, or you realize that that the business owner has made a mistake, and maybe they've built a new business with the wrong location or the wrong menu. And so you're constantly learning and evolving yourself, that you can, take these things that you learn and bring them back to the radio station.
So how do you feel that a small business makes an impact in today's crowded marketplace?
Well, I think there's a couple of things that are important. There's all types of new ideas, but business 101 is find a need and fill it. And a lot of business owners end up taking a passion for something that they love, and it's just not economically viable. So it's important to have a passion, but it's really important too to find a need and fill it. Whether it's a unique restaurant and it's not duplicated here in Hartford, and in other places in the country, this type of restaurant is popular, and then you bring it to Hartford. So you've got to take your passion, but run it through a filter and make sure that it's a viable option. And then one of the biggest mistakes people make in starting a business is they just don't tell enough people, and they never get to a critical mass where enough regular customers are coming in to support the business so that it thrives and grows. So those are all important factors.
With the latest census numbers out and most cities and towns seeing growth in the Hispanic population, can you shed some light on this? And is it the only demographic growing in Connecticut?
It's pretty much the only demographic that is growing when you take a look at the census. Now, we're kind of fortunate at Full Power Radio. We have several Spanish stations. We were one of the innovators in launching a Spanish network of stations, but we have them in Springfield, several channels in the Hartford market, New London, New Haven, Bridgeport. We cover about 4 million people with our footprint of Spanish stations, and advertisers are very excited to be a part of that, because they know they need to be there when the city of Hartford's census numbers are into the 40% of the population here being Hispanic, they know that they need a voice, and they can't miss that market. And it's not just radio they need to be part of that whole community, whether it's doing something for including their business in some sort of event like the Puerto Rican Day Festival and Parade here in Hartford, or one of the many concerts and things that come through.
So John, if one of the businesses here was to come to you and wanted to advertise on the Hispanic stations, but didn't know Spanish at all, do you do anything for them in that regard?
Yeah, well, what I would do is write a commercial for them in English and then translate it and have it voiced in Spanish to make sure that we have the message correct. And the other thing, some businesses are reluctant to target the Hispanic market because they feel that they don't have enough of their staff that are bilingual and speak Spanish. But when in fact, most of the Hispanics today are extremely bilingual. And in fact, they're speaking less and less Spanish than ever. But they come back to Hispanic music, salsa, merengue, reggaeton, because that's their heritage. And music is a huge part of the Latin community.
So let's take that a little over now to recruiting employees, whether they're Hispanic or they're English speaking or whatever they might speak. It's become harder and harder for Connecticut businesses. We have seen employers try almost all media to recruit. How has radio played a part in this critical need?
It has become a huge category. And I know that at OUTFRONT, I see billboards all the time for folks looking for help. And it's been true with radio. And why they come to radio is because people are driving to work and they are employable. Some of the other mediums, especially like online, they'll apply for a job, but they do that so they can continue to get unemployment benefits, not that they really want a job. And we find that, to be the case. And we find that to be the case where they'll apply for the job, they'll arrange for an interview, and then they just don't show up. So I think that a lot of medias have certainly gotten a lot of, advertisers from that category. I think it's going to continue to be a big category. I just found out last week about the Great Resignation, where people are really rethinking their lives, and the husband and wife, one decides to work, the other one takes care of their home because childcare has been just a nightmare for young families. And they're kind of rethinking things a little bit. And there's less people in the job market, and I think that's gonna continue on for a while. And we didn't really see that changing when unemployment benefits, when some of them were cut back in September.
So let me understand this. So does a business actually put out an ad that they need employees on the radio? Is that how they're using it?
Yeah, we're putting together a commercial. We want to talk about the business, talk about that it's a great place to work, or maybe there's some unique benefits that we really accentuate. And then we come up with a commercial, indicating that this business is expanding. We're looking for additional people that are trained in this or that, and kind of give the features and benefits. Sometimes there's signing bonuses. Some businesses have become incredibly desperate. I know one that I work with, they used to spend $3,000 or $4,000 a month advertising for recruitment. They're now spending $30,000 a month. So their budget for recruitment advertising has been expanded tenfold, which kind of shows, it's a slightly alarming that they're having that much of a problem to find help, that they're spending that much money and resources.
So from your clients, are you monitoring the ROI on how many actually find employees this way?
They are extremely happy when they get response and results. I had a painter, he ended up advertising a couple of years ago before the pandemic, and he got 3 people that were very qualified that he ended up hiring 2 of the 3 painters. And I didn't know, you never know, everyone quantifies results differently. And I didn't know whether he was going to be happy with that or not. And he was ecstatic. He was like, I got 2 great painters from the radio ad, and I had 3 people apply. And the way we also script the commercials, even if someone isn't looking for a job, it's still, we're branding and raising awareness of the business. We put the business in a positive light, that that they're expanding, business is increasing. We're looking for, salespeople or whatever it is the case.
Well, John, before we move on to our next panelist, do you have any further words of wisdom to share with our audience today regarding radio advertising?
Well, I think in all advertising, I think that we need to, for a business to succeed today, they need to really be on their game with marketing and advertising. And it goes a long way from external advertising to actually internal advertising inside the business. Because what we find in talking to the businesses and entrepreneurs out there, the consumers are incredibly confused. They're confused if the business is open, how they're opened, and they really need some direction. And that's where external advertising can, just raise the level of, and some businesses were offline or closed for a while, and they need re-energizing just to let people know that, they are open and how they may be open, whether it's online or curbside, or things are back to normal and you can go right into the business. So there's a lot of confusion. I think, tomorrow, the future customers are like tomorrow's customers, this holiday season's customers. And I think that they need to immediately tell people about, how they are open and how they can benefit them. And then consumers are always looking for what they always have been. They want it fast and they want it as cheap as possible. And then they also want quality too. So consumers, their demand for products and services are high. Their expectations are high. So there's a lot of things. I think it's tougher than ever to be a business person today. You got supply line challenges. You've got consumers that are probably more demanding. And then there's mixed messages as to, what's open, how it's open, and how they can support or go to each business.
Well, thank you, John. I think you gave us some great takeaways to consider as we move forward. So now let's hear from a television advertising expert. Diane Hannes is president and general manager for NBC Connecticut and Telemundo, which are the NBC Universal owned local television stations serving both English and Spanish viewers throughout Connecticut. In her role, Diane is responsible for the station's overall management, which includes the primary broadcast channels, as well as the station's online and digital platforms. Diane earned a bachelor's degree in literature and communications from Benedictine University in Illinois, and her experience spans more than 35 years. Welcome, Diane.
Thank you, Paulette.
Can you tell me how you became interested in working for the television industry?
I love telling this story, actually, and it's a little embarrassing, but when I was a girl, a really young girl, both of my parents worked, and the television was my babysitter, essentially. And there were a lot of shows in the 60s that had advertising at its root, and one of them in particular was Bewitched. And the background of advertising was the agency that Darren Stevens worked for. And I absolutely, as a little girl, loved the power of persuasion. And from that day on, and shortly thereafter, I knew that all I wanted to do was work in television advertising.
Wow, that's a great story.
Silly, but it's true.
Can you share some insights on what creative marketing approaches advertisers should consider when branding themselves post-pandemic?
Sure. Now, we've touched on that. Victoria and John definitely touched on it. And really, for me, it comes down to relevance. People have been through so much with the pandemic, and they've both lived with the products and services and without. And so they really, now that everything is starting to open up again, they really want to make sure that the advertising communication that's coming from these brands is really relevant to the way their life has changed, both when we were on lockdown and now as everything opens up. And then I think the next part is to be meaningful. And again, Victoria and John touched on that a little bit, but to really make an emotional connection. You'll see ads on the air now that are just different. They have a different tone to them. We mentioned humor. We mentioned a little bit of emotional touching. One that comes to mind is the Roomba vacuum cleaner. So before we were at home, locked down, we just looked at that as a utilitarian device. But as we sat there month after month and we weren't leaving our house that much, the Roomba actually became almost kind of part of the family. And if you look at the way the advertising messages have changed, they've made that the actual vacuum cleaner, have a personality and be meaningful to you. And so what you're seeing is with consumer products, especially, you're seeing that change is happening in the creative. There's another example with Amazon. I don't know if you've seen some of the recent Amazon commercials, but instead of talking about the utility of what they do, they're really talking about their employees. There's this commercial where there's like a nurse who works at Amazon, but also is an essential employee. And so they're really making that emotional connection between the product, what they're selling, and how it affects you.
It appears that today the way we consume content has become fragmented. So how should businesses consider marketing themselves to ensure they will be seen and heard by their ideal customer?
Well, the beauty is this proliferation of platforms that we have now. I started as a linear television station, and then, came cable, and then came mobile and digital, and now over the top. I mean, these are all multiple platforms that we offer to our advertisers. And so, you really want to make sure that your brand is aligned with the legitimate content that is on each of those platforms. And then I think you really need to delve into the research and demographics that come with each of them to make sure that you're using that to your advantage. And then by doing that and targeting that way, you're also using your budget the best way that you can.
I was thinking that we talked earlier about the 2020 census revealing that we are a more diverse state. How should this information influence a company's marketing strategy?
Well, I think the census data has spoken to us, and we have the Telemundo station group and Telemundo locally, both in Connecticut and in Springfield. And what I would say is, the Hispanic market that watches Telemundo, it's just huge and growing. And I think when those census data came out, we were even more surprised because of how quickly it had changed in that decade. And, that particular market segment has incredible purchasing power. We know them to be very, very mobile. They're highly engaged in social media. And like we talked about earlier, the majority of them are bilingual. So we really need to go back and use those targeting capabilities that I talked about to talk to them, because, like some of the way that we watch our consumers and we cross promote both in English and Spanish on both stations is that, a typical consumer might sit down with their family and watch a novella in prime time on Telemundo. And then they may stay for local news on Telemundo, or they may switch over to English, in which case they're choosing our English offering. So, we really need to drill down on what is the expectation of that audience, because, I feel like advertisers for the longest time just didn't count that segment in as much as they do now. They're incredibly important.
Now, we've talked about brand loyalty. How do you believe it is more important than ever? What are some brand values that businesses should highlight to differentiate themselves in the marketplace?
Well, Victoria had the statistic and she said, I think 75% of consumers want to align themselves with brands that match up with their own values. And I think we talked about sustainability. Victoria talked about sustainability. There's also culture, the environment, religion. I mean, so again, for me, it goes back to that emotional connection, you know, that loyalty, especially with the younger audience, but really it's almost ubiquitous now. I think it's just about everyone. You really need to make that connection that your brand stands for something that the consumer really wants to align with. And, you know, one of the issues that every advertiser has, both, you know, big advertisers with, you know, national brands and small business owners, is that there's just so much choice. And I think you really need to know, like, you know, you have to concentrate your efforts. It can't just be a one size fits all advertising anymore.
Well, you say there's a lot of choice, but what would you say digital marketing, why would it be critical to a small business in the post-pandemic world?
Well, the amazing part about digital advertising is that the back end analytics are there. I mean, you know, you can buy linear television or radio or many other mediums, but digital, you know, they actually know the eyeballs. They can tell you how many people, you know, sat through your content and how long they stayed for. And, you know, so to me, you know, there's an amazing, you know, back end to it and you get real tangible results. And then I think the other one is affordability. You know, especially for advertisers that don't have huge budgets, I think it's a great entry level for those kinds of advertisers.
So, well, we're going to end with, as a television advertising guru, what other suggestions would you like to share today?
Well, I love all the ones that have been shared so far. I think what I would add to that is to experiment. You know, there's that old adage that, you know, half of my advertising is wasted. I just don't know which half. You know, I think you need to really, you know, we are more prepared than ever before to really follow what the data says and where your advertiser's going and who's, you know, who's choosing you, who's experimenting with you. And I feel like we really need to get in there and allow every advertiser to take a chance and experiment a little bit.
Well, thank you, Diane. And thank you to each panelist for sharing your time and talent with us today. Let's see if our audience has any questions. Matt, do we have any?
Yeah, we do actually have two questions here, both from Jose. He says anyone in the panel can answer these. So the first question is the best way to advertise to get more leads for your business. And the second part is the cost of advertising on the different platforms. So anyone can take that if they want to.
I'll take the cost of advertising. I think that's the beauty of what we do is I can speak for all the mediums is we have solutions for everything. You know, whether it's that I'm a small business and this is my advertising budget and I just want to listen to someone tell me what I can do with it. You know, we have soup to nuts. We have every option for all of our platforms, and our platforms are just, you know, so many.
Anyone want to add to that?
I'd like to add to that. I think that all of the panelists here have the same goal for these advertisers. You know, we want the advertising to work as much as the business owner does, because then they become repeat customers. And you know, there's also a satisfaction too. I think someone had mentioned, I think Victoria had mentioned it. You are satisfied when this business is growing, it's doing well, they're getting response and results. And I think that, you know, I listen to what your reps are telling you too, because they sell advertising on a daily basis. And they are experts in their field, and they bring a lot to the table. And there's always a standout rep that will go above and beyond and learn about your business, what makes your business tick, and then really come up with a unique way to tell your story. And I think it's very, very difficult for the business owner to do that. Like for me, when I come up with campaigns for the radio stations, it's hard for me to tell my story because I'm so close to it. I'm living it. But I use Victoria's company, and she has an excellent rep, Jen, and we work well together, and she brings in ideas. She targets different areas. That's value. It's not just the media that they sell, but also it's the reps, it's the sales managers, it's their team that really can learn about your business. I train my salespeople to become mini detectives, to shop the business, learn about what's their strengths and what's their weaknesses, and really try to accentuate that in the message. And I think that all of these advertising mediums can work, but the message is the most important thing. Telling your story, inviting customers in, building awareness, and doing it consistently.
And just lastly, thanks, Jose, for the questions. Without knowing exactly what your business is, we do have a ton of examples across all of our media in regards to business leads, whether it's B2B or even like recruiting or real estate. A lot of different advertisers, a lot of different verticals that do really thrive on the shareability, on, a referral and so forth. So all of them trust and know all of our media forms. And as Diane mentioned, they're all affordable. We want to help your small businesses grow. So we can definitely find a plan that works for you. We just look forward to diving in.
Oh, and for the record, I just want to add that I've used both Victoria and John's businesses to advertise my own.
Oh, there
And
you go.
Jose, you did mention windows, doors, and sidings. We do have a lot of examples for other types of home improvement. So reach out to any of us and make sure we can give you some examples and chat further.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Was there another question, Matt?
No, that's it.
That's it for today. And have we met the time ending there, Jackie?
You have.
Oh.
I want to thank you all so much and just weigh in a little bit myself. I with Better Business Bureau, have worked in the marketing, communications, community relations, event arena for quite some time. And I have worked with all three of these companies, as well as others. And I will attest to the fact that they really do have your best interest at heart, the reps. And when you are working with them, they want to understand your business. When I work with them, they want to understand BBB inside and out, whomever I work with, to be sure that we're putting the right messaging out there and that it's working for consumers throughout the state. And we're able to put our message out there and why we're here, how we're helping, and vice versa for the businesses as well. So I appreciate you all and all of you taking your time to be on this panel today.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank everybody who has come, who's attended this session, who's attended every session, all of our panelists, all of our presenters, as well as all of our sponsors of this event, without whom this event wouldn't be possible. So please take a moment, if you haven't already, go back and visit betterbusinesssummit.com and check out our sponsors tab. The sponsors really have the same value and mission as our summit and really want to help Connecticut businesses survive, thrive, grow, and continue to prosper. So definitely take the time to go over and check them out. We appreciate you coming out and taking the time to continue to learn. And we hope you have a fantastic remainder of the week. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.